and welcome back to AAT's podcast, episode 11, with myself, Addy of AddiBiotics.
Me, Aiden Riley.
Good afternoon, Aiden.
Good afternoon, Emmett.
How are you?
Not bad, my friend. Not bad. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Thank you very much. So, today's podcast, we started a new trilogy, and this is actually one of Aiden's favourite trilogies. Actually, everybody...
Yours?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And not only that, because if you look at it, it's an iconic movie, isn't it?
Benchmark.
Benchmark.
It set the stage for the other things, well, I don't want to say what type of film it is yet, but
Yeah.
it set the stage for many other films like that.
To follow.
Yes.
That is true. And so the story is about a 17-year-old. Part one is about a 17-year-old who, attending in his year in 1985, and he accidentally gets sent back to 1955 in this cool car.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
his best friend's a crazy scientist.
Yeah, I'm sure you know what it is now.
Yeah, and it starred Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, and the classic 80s movie is Back to the Future.
Yes.
Great Scott, I hope you got it right.
Great Scott.
Oh, this is heavy if they didn't say that. Hey, McFly!
McFly.
Biff. I've got a story to tell about the actor who played Biff, Thomas F. Wilson. A great actor. I mean, he'll be eternally remembered for Biff Tannen and Mad Dog Tannen, who he played in part 3. Time's up, Ron.
Oh, man. Gotta love these movies.
They were just all-time classic movies. I mean, so...
Johnny Be Good.
That was a classic song, Johnny Be Good. So, yeah, so the idea for... So, believe it or not, the idea came for this movie was... believe it or not, the idea came for it where they said that one of the writers said, how would it feel if he went back in time and met his father when the father was the same age as him? Because if you look, that does transcend into the film, doesn't it? Yes. Because if you look at Marty, he accidentally ends up back in 1955, and right away he doesn't know who the guy in the cafeteria, so the coffee shop sitting next to him, who he is, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a diner, isn't it? Diner.
Yeah, it's a diner. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So he said that, and he just said, "Wait, who's this guy? Who's this guy? What do you want?" He goes, "You're George Mcfly." Yes. So, and what was also funny was, the other scene where he's running out when George is gone on the bike, and he runs out. So, "Hey, Dad, George, I mean, you on the bike?"
Hey, Dad, no, wait, George, hey, no, you on the bike. It's like
it was yeah. So the inspiration came from Bob Gale, who was one of the owners of the he owns the rights to the movie. He says, discovering his father's high school yearbook and wondering whether or not he would be friends with his father as a teenager. Gale also said if he'd given a chance to go back in time, he would really go back and see if they would be friends. Because remember, that's so many years back, and Marty's gone back in time.
30 years.
Yeah, 30 years. And it was just absolutely... It's an all-time classic movie. And it had a great soundtrack by Huey Lewis and the News. What's your favourite song on the soundtrack?
Johnny Be Good.
That was a good track. My favourite was Power of Love.
Oh, Power of
I think that kind of became the film's
Don't
themes.
need money.
Yeah.
Don't need fame.
You're auditioning for another show, bro.
Don't need a credit card.
To ride this train.
Yeah.
No, sorry, so you got me singing. And so that was the idea for the movie, where they were just like, because it's true that if you'd gone back in time and met somebody, it'd be like, it was because somebody, when like, say, we're one generation and the generation before us says, oh, we used to do this, we used to do that, we used to do everything, and they'd be like, what would it be like living in that era? It's like, for example, today's day and age, you have these generations, and you have the ones who are going to come after. They're nothing but social media. Yeah. And if you go back, we said to them, how did you lot used to, they would ask me, how did you lot used to talk to each other when you were in the same room?
I get the same thing. I get the same thing. So look, I remember when I was a kid, right? Yeah. And I remember the summers. Yeah. Summer holidays, you're off school, it's amazing. You don't have to be up early. The sun's shining. What do? You go out. You knock at your mate's door. Yeah. You're coming out. Yes, what we're doing. I don't know. I don't care. Let's just get out there and do something. We didn't have these. We didn't have mobile phones.
These were obsolete. If you had a phone, everybody, basically, it looked like the size of a brick.
It looked like the size of my head. That's what that was the
hairs alone.
Yeah, yeah. But it's but you know, I explain that to people that are a lot younger than myself, and I'm like, look, you know, this is what it was like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We didn't have any of this stuff. We used to go out and play. We used to go out and enjoy ourselves. We used to just do stupid antics and just be kids. Water fights, you know, Kirby, play football in the local park. That's what you did.
Yeah, you did. I mean, one thing we used to do was when I lived in the old area, we used to just meet up sometimes and just like say, hey, let's just go to one friend's house. We'll just chill there, or sometimes even we'll just go to the park and just goof about there if we had to. Yeah. Not anything specific.
No.
Not even anything. Taking the football. Yeah, we take a football. Yeah, we played it. We didn't. We just got on with what we wanted to get done.
We just did stuff.
Yeah, we did, and those are the good old days.
The stuff never made sense, but you did it.
It's true, yeah, because you know it's that happy moment in your time, isn't it?
Oh, beautiful moments. That's when you're a youth, and when you're that age, you need to get out and enjoy it, because
of course you do.
When you become an adult, there's all these self pressures.
You're right.
There's always these, you know, complex emotions that come into play, and you just think to yourself, it sounded really good back then. I wish I would have done that, but I'm glad I did do that.
Yeah,
but
we all did.
If you look at photographs now of kids in the 90s or 80s, and you go, what the hell are they doing?
We're enjoying ourselves.
That's what they're doing. But if you look at kids now, all I see is just
one on
phones.
A phone. You look at a phone picture of somebody on a phone.
Yeah.
No, it's true. It's like, for example,
it's like, here's me out with my mates.
It's like I take a picture here. Oh, so and so is on the phone, probably messaging someone else on their phone.
Here's me at Paris. Here's me at the Taj Mahal. Here's me at the Christ de la Lima. What are you doing? I'm enjoying myself. That's not enjoying yourself. I'm on Facebook. Leave me alone.
Absorb the moment.
I'm on TikTok. I'm recording myself. Why? Just enjoy the moment.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you have to do. So before we get jumping into character details, as we do with every episode and every podcast, I've got to, because as you know, on Instagram we put up a post like saying, can you guess this movie? It starred so and so.
Directed by so and so.
It was filmed in this year, and the movie's about this, that, and the other. So I've got a list of shout outs I want to give. The first one I have to give away is to Kieran from my gym.
Okay.
Funny story, this previous weekend that just happened, and he was asking me how's the podcast coming. So it was great. We just finished one trilogy. We're starting another trilogy. Because what is it? It's all right. Then tell you what, I'll give you a guess. All I said to him was, the movie, the trilogy had a cool car in it. He goes, is it Back to the Future? Right away he got it right.
How old is he?
I can't remember. Yeah. I'll be honest.
Well, I tell you what though, fantastic guy. Well done. You're cool already. You know, it has a cool car. I mean, you didn't say anything else.
That was it.
If that was anybody else, they may have said something like Batman, or they might have said something like, Death Proof, Kurt Russell.
That wouldn't have been the 80s, bro. That would have been down the line. But I see where you're coming from. So also, yeah, you're right, Death Proof, I still need to
the cool car in that.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell. Man, that car was cool. But it's not as cool as the DeLorean, sorry.
And the Batmobile. And all of James Bond's cars.
The Austin DB9.
Oh, yes.
The Aston Martin.
Yes. Also, I want to give another shout out to James, one of the trainers at my gym, and a really great chiropractor as well.
Oh, okay.
And seriously, thanks for fixing my back the other day.
Yeah, you had an adjustment.
It was more snap, crackle, and pop than a box of Rice Krispies, put it that way, bro. Best way of describing it. Also, want to give a shout out to, got the answer right, to Daniel from Everything That's Life. You must have seen him
you should
on the Chat Over Coffee episode.
The guy can lift good, can't he?
No, he eats well.
Yeah, he eats well as well.
He eats extremely well, bless him. Also want to give a shout out to our copyright friend Mantis.
Hey Mantis, I haven't seen you for a long time. Yeah. He's been hiding in a cave.
Bless him. Will,
Of course, Will. We can't forget about Will.
He got the answer right. Also, Ben, I've known Ben for like over 20. I've known him for a very, very long time. We went to college together. A really, really great guy.
Hello, Ben.
And so this is your introduction here, bro. And also Claire, who's going to be appearing on the Chat Over Coffee segments. And also to Charlotte, they all got the answers right. So again, thank you very much for getting the answers right. And again, as promised, the shout outs were given.
Well done, guys. Well done.
Yeah, guys and girls.
Guys and girls.
Yeah. So again, thank you everybody. And obviously, with trilogies and sagas, you just have to get the first one right. Everything else is just...
Everything else just falls into place.
Yeah, definitely.
You get the first one right, obviously the others are going to be the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. And... So now I'm going to move into the character details. So one great thing, well, before we go into what is your favourite thing about Back to the Future other than it being a classic movie?
Oh man, I just love the whole concept of, for back then, it was quite rare that you would see a film like that, right?
Yeah.
This 17-year-old, who in the right mind would place a 17-year-old kid, high school student, and pair him up with a mad scientist, develop a time machine, and send him back to the 50s
by accident?
By accident. What the hell? Who does that? But obviously, these people did. So, my favourite thing about this film is it's just the whole idea of the antics that he got up to, and him holding the picture and seeing himself disappear. Like,
erase from existence.
What's going on here? And man, you gotta love the Doc as well. Hey Doc!
I actually do. I've got a funny story. There was somebody I used to work with back in the day, and they were studying to become an archaeologist. And hats off, a great career. Great career to go down. So got to
travel the world as well doing that.
Another Indiana Jones, and then you had I said, so you're going to become a doctor down the lines? Yeah, so I guess I might as well call you Doc. And every few seconds, hey Doc, hey Doc, hey Doc. Because you sound like Marty from Back to the Future. Yes,
Doc, Doc, Doc.
It's like true nowadays. Even when you go to your regular GP, you can't help but call him Doc, can you?
It's either Bugs Bunny that comes into mind or Marty.
I think we have to go with Marty. I mean, Bugs Bunny's cool. Don't get me wrong.
But particularly in Space Jam. Anyway, we're going off topic.
Yeah.
Hey, Doc.
So one of the great characters of that movie, definitely Marty McFly. He takes no lip off anybody. Does whatever. He's a free spirit. Like even when he's on this skateboard and he's just even grabbing onto that guy's Jeep. Even the guy looks back and he's like, "What are you doing?"
What you
He's like, "I'm fine."
That's another thing as well. Nobody knows who this guy is. He just appears out of nowhere in 1955. Comes out the diner, gets on this skateboard. He's wearing all these weird clothes that nobody has seen before.
Like the life, that big...
like, what are you wearing, a life jacket?
Body warmer, Did you just jump ship? He goes, what's with the life preserver?
And he's like, no, it's a body warmer.
What? 3 people in that movie say it's a life preserver. First it's the guy who owns the diner.
Yeah.
Then it's his grandmother who doesn't know yet that's her future grandson sitting there.
Yeah.
And then it was one of Biff's cronies. When Biff goes to, what are you looking at, butthead? He goes, check this out with the life preserver. Dog thinks he's gonna drown, and it was a classic scene as well. And then you had quite a few like actors who went on to doing big things. You had, especially out of Biff's gang, you had one of them with the dark hair who went on to play in Titanic.
But the guy with sunglasses.
Oh, 3D, Casey Shamasco. Yeah, he one movie I remembered him mainly in was Young Guns Part 1. He's actually one of Billy the Kid's gang members in that. And the other one, the one who's near enough as tall as Biff, the one with the dark hair, played by Billy Zane.
Yeah.
He went off to play in Titanic. He was actually in Titanic, yeah. I didn't realise who he was until I saw Titanic.
Quite a fair bit of time later on, isn't it?
At least, 10, 12 years down the line. And then, so one great thing that I like to say, Marty McFly,
So what do you like about the film? What's your favourite thing? It's like,
I think it's
the overall... the whole concept of sending a 17-year-old kid.
It's every person's dream back in the 80s. Like, if I could go back in time and change this from happening, I'd probably be better off when I come back in my own time. Because they say if you change something in the past, it will have the effect in the future as well.
But that's what makes the film so clever, because it never ever goes the way he wants it to go.
Exactly.
Because you can change one thing, but everything else will be messed with.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's why Doc always says, do not mess with time, with what happens in the past, because it will always be consequences in the future.
Yeah, because he's like, Marty's trying to warn him about something.
Yeah, and he's like, no, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
The Doc's like, this is going to happen to you. If you don't do this, take a precaution. Your life depends on it. No, I don't want to hear about it.
Anything.
I'm going to just tell you straight up anyway what's going to happen. Because because if you look at the beginning of that movie where Doc gets shot, Marty then has the realization without him knowing about it when he ends up back in time, because when he accidentally triggers the time switch.
Yeah, he goes over the kilometers an hour, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That if you go over that, then you're going to set the time machine off. The thermal, what is it called? The
flux capacitor.
The flux capacitor, yes.
Yeah.
The flux capacitor.
Got that right. But yeah, Marty's like back in the 80s, every kid wanted to be like Marty McFly. The Walkman, the skateboard, the denim clothing, the guitar, and wanting to be in a band. All he wants to do is hit it big, and then that's it. I don't have to do anything else. And he's like, oh, we're the Pinheads, the name of the band. And believe it or not, Michael J. Fox wasn't the original actor for that role.
Oh, here we go. Who was it?
It was actually an actor called Eric Schultz. But he was too intense. The reason why they had to end up recasting the character was because Eric Schultz was too intense, where he wouldn't want anyone to call him Eric. He'd want him to call him Marty. Like, apparently Crispin Glover, who plays George McFly, he would call him, apparently one day on set he said, hey Eric, call me Marty, that's who I am now.
Okay, that's gonna cause a lot of negativity in the set.
It rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because sometimes there are certain actors who can take intensity to a really great level. It's like Robert De Niro, for example, when he did the movie Raging Bull.
I need to watch that.
We need to review that. It's one of the best boxing
80s.
movies. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
80s, early 90s, yeah. And what it was, he's extremely intense, just like Christian Bale is when he comes to playing characters. They basically strip themselves of who they are not. Like Robert De Niro will strip De Niro and take on the character he's going to be portraying for the next few months to a year.
All encompassing, wasn't it? It was just full on played him. There was no bits of De Niro left.
No.
He just played him. Yeah, you've watched, and I know we're going off topic, but if you've watched The Fighter, right, with Wahlberg and Bale.
Yeah.
Bale in that, wow. How much weight he lost. But anyway, back to the film.
Back to the future.
You do get the sense. I mean, I'm quite shocked actually that he wasn't the original idea to play Marty. But there's always that, isn't there? There's always somebody else, and then that doesn't work out, and then all of a sudden they find a gem to play this guy, and thankfully it was Michael J. Fox that played him.
Yeah, because nobody but Michael J. Fox could have played.
No, he was made for that role.
He was made for that role. He was basically. It's like, for example, nobody but him could have played that, Marty McFly, and nobody but Christopher Lloyd
could have played the Doc.
It seemed humanly impossible.
Christopher Lloyd. There was nobody else that could play those two characters.
Yeah.
Nobody else. And even Biff. Nobody else could have played Biff.
Yeah. And because if you look at Marty in that movie, like Michael J. Fox said that, Marty being characterized, like riding skateboards, chasing girls, interested in playing music in hopes of becoming a rock star. That was actually his own dreams in real life when he was at high school.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised at that.
He
looks like that
either.
Kind of. He does seem like that kind of dude, doesn't he? That would actually want to, and he would look like he would suit that kind of persona as well.
Yeah, definitely.
The rock star kind of a person, because he actually played that as well. He actually played the guitar in the film.
Yeah, definitely. He did actually. And what was even funny was when you see Huey Lewis himself cameoing in the movie, because I'm not sure if you know this bit. You know the scene where they're all auditioning and they're hitting it, and then that guy with the speakerphone stands up and says, "I'm afraid you're too loud." That's Huey Lewis, who wrote the song Power of Love and sang it. And did most of the soundtrack for that movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
The film was huge.
It was a huge film. And it was like, I wasn't surprised that he I wasn't surprised the fact that there were sequels made. Back to the Future 2 was just as great. It truly was.
Wasn't there? There wasn't supposed to have been a trilogy there, was there?
Because it did so well, they had no choice but to carry on the series, and it's true though, because at the end of the day, like I said, at the end of the day, it did well. It did extremely well when it was doing that.
Yeah.
Because I think, why stop here? Let's go on and go on.
Well, if you can go back to the future, the amount of possibilities that you have at your fingertips.
Yeah, definitely.
Man, don't stop at one. I mean, you've got a great cast, you've got a great writing staff, you've got a great director, you've got a great production company. Make a trilogy. I mean, you've got no. I mean, there's no choice but to do that. People were demanding a sequel as well.
Of course they were.
People were demanding a sequel. It's not like they brought this sequel forward and we didn't really want this. People actually wanted them. I mean, you get so many sequels happening now where you think,
what's the point?
Did it really, like the latest one, Matrix 4.
Yeah.
Didn't really want that, but we got it anyway.
I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, don't see it, it's rubbish.
Okay,
it's too meta. It's rubbish. If you want to see it, if you want to have a laugh, go and have a look.
Right,
but it's crap. Anyway, you do get sequels where you go, didn't want it, but you gave it me anyway. I'm going to see it. Now I'm disappointed. I'm not surprised because I didn't really want it.
Yeah, exactly.
But these people wanted a Back to the Future 2 and a Back to the Future 3 because it was so damn good. And it would have been a tragedy if they didn't do it.
Yeah,
there's too many ideas.
There was too many great ideas. I mean, some of the concepts of part 2 are really great when we review that.
Yeah.
And so back to the characters. Dr. Emmett Brown, great Scott. What a great character.
Great Scott.
That was his catchphrase, just like Marty's catchphrase was, "This is heavy." And it's funny, like when
it's heavy, dark.
When he says it all the way, he goes, "What's heavy? Is there something wrong with the Earth's gravitational pull and everything?" One great thing I like about Doc Brown, he's so crazy, he's so enthusiastic, but he's kind of like trying to I wouldn't say compete with Marty, but he's trying to he kind of sees the young version of himself in Marty. What's a really interesting question would be, how did these two meet up? They never explain that in the movie.
No, that's a good thing. I think I've got a theory of that.
Please go for it.
Perhaps Doc's always known him.
Maybe.
Because of the time machine.
No, because remember, he doesn't see the time machine until he calls him down, don't he? That was just one of the most iconic scenes ever, where that truck opens up and you see the car coming out with the cool license plate, out of time. And then you ask him, "Doc, you built a time machine and a DeLorean? Yeah, if you got to go out in style."
I think that makes it such a special relationship because you never ever realise, we never are notified how they meet. Yeah. But we don't need to.
I think that would have ruined the movie.
Yeah, we don't need to. We don't need to know because you can have it's left open. Yeah. People can actually, it's like leaving an open ending. Ooh, what happened? Did he die? Didn't he die? What happened? How did they meet?
Yeah, exactly.
We will never know because his parents don't know about Doc.
They don't, do they?
So he's obviously not
Strickland
a huge family friend, isn't he?
Yeah, Mr. Strickland knows who he is, but he just calls him a crazy scientist. And, I think in a way...
He might have been a teacher.
I think you're right, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Marty kind of looks at Doc like a father figure because he's not really looking at George Mcfly very much in the beginning because George Mcfly is just this doormat of a dad he's got. Because he is, because if you look at him...
him in the film, he's very simple-minded, isn't he?
Yeah, because if you look at him in when Marty goes back in time to 55 and he sees George, what's happening to George? He's getting walked all over. He's
not surprised. He's not really surprised because his dad... in the present, is still kind of the same.
Yes, it's like even Biff's doing the exact same thing he did 30 years ago, and he's doing it now. Yeah. He's still walking all over this guy. It's like when you see him in the diner scene, and he's like going, "Oh, hello, anybody home?" Classic line. Don't get me wrong.
Anybody home? Hey, McFly.
Think, McFly. Think. And then he's like, saying to him, "Oh, "You got to do my homework, and I have to do my own writing." You don't want me to get kicked out of school, do you?
Do you, George? He's like, do you? And he's like, no, Biff, no.
And then he goes, "I'll have it in on Sunday." And then he goes...
and Marty's like, "Why did you let him talk to you like that?" And he's like what? Like that? Because it's Biff.
Yeah, and then he goes. Then fast forward 30 years later, he's still doing
the exact same thing.
Biff's my supervisor, and he does that same thing. You know, your shoes are untied, and then it's like slapping him across the face.
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. And Marty's like, "This is my dad."
This
and he goes,
is my dad.
Are
you kidding me?
The Doc says the exact same thing when he goes back in time.
He's in the school.
Which one's your pop? And the way Marty describes him is just priceless. It's a classic.
That guy over there.
He goes, "Which one's your pop?" He's like, "That's him." It's just like he says it.
That's him. Because his books, because he's carrying a load of books, isn't it? And Biff slams them.
No, those guys. Someone put a "kick me" sign.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And then obviously he drops his books all over the floor.
Yeah,
and he's like that. Goes, "Which one's your dad?"
That's him.
That's him. And he's like,
no. Then Doc goes after. Maybe you were adopted.
Maybe you were adopted.
That was just funny. And he goes, "What did your mum see in this guy?" She goes, "She felt bad when Grandpa hit him with the car." No, wait, he hit me with the car. It's changed over, hasn't it? But then, because if you look at him, as I mentioned, Marty spends more time with Doc than he spends with
because Doc's cool, isn't he?
Doc's cool. He's an inventor. He's an educated person. He's a doctor. He wants to know. He's on the verge of a big breakthrough. Yeah. And
he's got a fun time.
And what's George doing? George is just like waiting with that nervous laughter, like that when he's watching the TV.
Old and run down and being bullied all the time. He's just
he's not even he's not even doing anything else, is he?
No, he's just sitting there watching telly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. And Marty's like, "What? This is my dad? Really? I know this cool scientist. I'm gonna be his son."
Yeah,
let's go find him.
Adopted son.
Like, where have you been? Where have you been all night? My scientist. What?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so
cooler than you, Dad. It's cooler than you.
Yeah, and what also happened was, okay, so we're now move on to Biff Tannen. Who is Biff Tannen?
Before we do this, I've got one for you.
Please.
Did you know the script was rejected 44 times before it was greenlit?
Don't mess about. Sorry, but no, I'm not sure. Well, that's a big surprise.
44 times.
44 times.
44 times it was rejected. What? Seriously? Why would you reject? Unless they had to redraft it.
Most of the times when you hand in scripts and somebody, like, say the person who's going to read it, they say the exact same thing. So this bit needs changing. Can you go back and rechange it to this? Add more of this to it. Can you change this? Get rid of this bit. It makes no sense.
Terrible the first time because
first 44.
A film like that to be rejected, something must have been extremely wrong. And another one before we go to the next one. You know, Biff's catchphrase "made like a tree" and "get out of here."
Yeah.
And Butthead were improvised.
Yeah, I don't know that.
By Tom Wilson.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
see, there you go.
Aiden got my reaction. Right. And okay, so that's one thing. So Biff Tannen, he's a person everybody has come across in life, a bully. He has. I mean, like
we've all been there.
He's a big dude. He's like way over 6 feet tall, and he picks on, and he's a lot bigger. And
he's got a complex.
He's got a complex. He drives a pretty cool car.
Yeah.
And
he's a jock, basically.
He's a jock, yeah. He's a jock and a bit of a jerk, I would say.
A jock and jerk, yeah.
Yeah, in one. And then he's like always picking on this little 90-pound
skinny dude,
90-pound weakling who wouldn't, he knows he wouldn't do anything back to me. That's why he picks on him, and he's still carrying on picking on him until that guy at the diner who decides years later, "I'm going to run for mayor," because Marty gives him that idea. He goes, "Yeah, he's going to run for mayor." He goes, "Yeah, you're right, mayor. That's not a bad
mayor. That doesn't sound pretty bad."
Yeah, that's true. And
he's a cleaner, isn't he?
Yeah, and then he says to him as well. He says to him that I'm gonna, you're gonna stand up for yourself because you're gonna let people like this walk all over you for the rest of your life. Don't do that. And Marty's like, I have to help this guy out. He changes his dad for the greater good. For when he ends up back in his own time, even the house has completely changed.
Comes a writer, comes a famous author.
Like yourself.
Not yet. One day.
You'll get there, bro. But yeah, so believe it or not, you know how Thomas F. Wilson came up with the idea for Biff Tannen? He drew up his own experiences when he was bullied at school. And I got your reaction now. So we're neck and neck. And Yeah, so he drew inspiration from that. But they said everybody who worked with him on set, he said he was like the nicest person to talk to, and he was easy to get along with and everything.
Yeah.
And but in all honesty, he'll eternally be remembered as Biff Tannen.
He's always going to be. I mean,
they even say, now that you mentioned it, they even say that you know when Michael J. Fox goes off anywhere, and they say the exact same. Nobody calls him Michael J. Fox. Always call him McFly. They'll shout him out. They say anywhere they see him. They say during a cast reunion in 2010, Michael J. Fox said that strangers would call him McFly constantly. He goes, he'd be he said the most remarkable instance that was made on a remote jungle in South Asia, the country Bhutan, and also it's located between China and India and in the eastern Himalayas. A group of Buddhist monks passed him, and one of them looked at him and said, "Marty McFly."
What?
Yeah.
You see, it doesn't matter where you are. This film
is iconic.
It's transcended so many generations.
It has. It's an iconic movie.
It will never die. This film will never die.
It's one of the movies, no matter how many times you want to watch it, especially the first part, it will never get boring. Even though you know what's going to happen the next time around, it's
twists and turns, always twists and turns. I mean, because there's so many possibilities. He does something wrong. Doc's like, you shouldn't have done that. You're going to change the future. And then everything just changes. You're like,
yeah, it's
man, he's going to do it again.
Yeah, it's like that scene where Marty, throughout the whole movie, is trying to say to him, Doc, this is going to happen to you, then I come back here. Because you can't tell me this. You're going to endanger my future like you've endangered yours.
It's like when he tries to give him that letter. And he goes, and he's like, I don't want to know. He's like, Doc, it's about your life. It's about your future. No.
Yeah.
I told you not to change the future. And then that massive storm comes, and obviously got to go in the car.
And then what was even funny was that one of my other favourite bits, and that was when he goes, we need to power the DeLorean to bring it back. He goes, you can't. He goes, how? I need to get plutonium. But the thing is, you can't buy it in any store. Anything that can work is a bolt of lightning. We don't know when it's going to happen. He has that paper he's brought with him from the future, and goes, we do now, here. This is when it's going to happen. He goes, all right, we can work on this time, and we can work on this date. You have to spend a week in the house. But when you go back, you'll be like you never even left, which is quite smart of Dark.
It's a very smart film.
Definitely. And so moving on to the... Sorry, did you want to say?
Yeah, another one. Okay, another one for you. Universal Pictures head Sid Sheinberg did not like the title Back to the Future.
Wow.
Insisting that nobody would see a movie with future in the title.
Okay, yeah. That's a bit...
In a memo to Robert Zemeckis, he said that the title should be changed to, now listen to this, you're going to laugh, but I hope you laugh, Spaceman from Pluto.
What? That's a sarcastic laugh.
Yeah. Tying in with Marty adds alien jokes in the film. And also suggested further changes like replacing the I'm Darth Vader from Planet Vulcan line with I'm a spaceman from Pluto. Sheinberg was persuaded to change his mind by a response memo from Steven Spielberg, which thanked him for sending a wonderful joke memo, and that everyone got a kick out of it. Sheinberg, too proud to admit he was serious, gave in to letting the film retain its title.
Good.
What a moron. But anyway, I am glad they didn't do that, because nobody would have wanted to see a film in that name.
That title would have been awful.
Would have damaged the whole film.
Franchise.
The whole franchise. Would you want to see a film with that name? Spaceman from Pluto? Are you kidding me?
The name alone will make it sound boring.
Yeah, Spaceman from Pluto. Okay.
Yeah, it's true though. The name. If you have a bad title for a movie,
who's going to see it?
Not only is nobody going to want to see it, but the thing is, it'll be one of the movies that will be like 100 movies you should never watch.
Yes, it would.
It'll
be on the YouTube. It'll be on the YouTube video. It's playing YouTube videos like that.
Yeah, definitely. And Okay, yeah, and then so moving on to the next characters, George and Lorraine Mcfly. And George is obviously one guy a lot of people have related to in the past, where he's a skinny boy who's been bullied a lot, and he doesn't know how to stand up for himself until he doesn't know Marty's a big role in his life. And this kind of transcends in part 3, where you see Seamus Mcfly, and he goes,
Seamus, yeah.
Yeah, and he comes down there and goes, Seamus, what are you doing? He goes, it's like something my future told me to come down here and everything. And like, you see that happening because he doesn't realize that's his great grandson who's about to he could be killed.
Yes.
And luckily he takes that precaution right there and then. And what was even funny was, going back to George, he's that 90-pound weakling who doesn't have any friends. He spends all this time in his room, writing in his room stories, and he thinks everything that he has written is real. It's like when Marty plays that prank on him, saying, "I'm Darth Vader, I come from the planet Vulcan," and everything. And he likes this girl. He kind of likes Lorraine, but he doesn't know how to approach her. Until Marty comes along, but they don't seem to realise that's
the scene when he does approach.
when Doc goes to him, maybe you were adopted, Marty, and maybe it was this. What did your mum see in this guy? And which was a really funny scene. But then she tells him years later to the other two kids that you felt sorry for him because Grandpa hit him with the car, and she goes, if Grandpa hadn't hit him, none of you would have been born. In a way, she is definitely the brains in that house. George is just working a regular, boring job just so he can keep the roof over their head. But what he doesn't realise is...
It's a sad reality, isn't it?
It is a sad reality. And then what he doesn't realise is years later, when he goes back in time, and he's changed them both for the greater good. He has to make sure the fact that if these two do not exist, because you see that picture's being erased. It is, isn't it?
He's got his little brother there, and then he's the youngest. Yeah, he's the youngest one, so he gets erased last.
Yeah.
So he's still there, and his siblings aren't, and he's like, I've got to do something about this. Yeah. And obviously that's when he does all he can to get them both to meet and fall for each other.
Yeah, because Doc says the same thing. You've endangered your future, and if you don't fix it now, when you go back, you won't even exist because you've damaged everything.
Yeah.
And that's why Lorraine's always following him around, but not George.
Yeah.
But you don't seem to realise, she doesn't obviously know.
Yeah, his mum's got the hots for him.
What was even funny was, the scene where he's been hit by the car, Marty, and then she goes, his grandfather picks him up, takes him in the house, and he's like, Mom, is that you? And she goes, you're back in 1955. 1955? He thought it was a dream. And if you notice, that same scene carries on in all 3 movies. It happens in 1985 when Biff destroyed everything because he's become rich and powerful because of that book. And then it happens again in 1885?
No, 1885, because he puts in 18 instead of 19.
Yeah.
He goes...
No, because he goes back to save Doc, doesn't he?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he does, doesn't he? Because Doc goes back to 1885
by accident, and then he goes, and then he does that same scenes there, the towel on the head, and he's like, oh, and he wakes up, and he's like, you're my, you can't say the fact that you're my mother, and
it's very awkward.
It would be really. And then what's even funny was Lorraine's mum says to him, you look familiar. Do I know your mother? And he's sitting right next to her. Yeah, I believe you can say that. I believe you could say that.
He's like, yeah, she's sitting right there.
And like he's like meeting all his future uncles and aunts, and like the funny thing is what he says to the baby in the
Does he say something like
he goes, you're my Uncle Joe, you better get used to these bars, kid. Because he says that to him. That was again, he goes, and then the grandma's like, he loves it in there. And like they're realizing, because remember he goes into jail again in 1985.
He does.
So he's like, really, obviously, I've got a criminal for an uncle. He's basically saying that.
Yeah.
And what was even funny, another line was, when Lorraine's father, she goes, But they go, what an odd young man. He goes, he's an idiot. His parents are probably idiots as well. Not knowing that one of the parents is there. And she goes, Lorraine, if you ever have kids like that, give them up. And then, like, that is your kid on the way.
That is your damn kid.
Which is even funny. But she doesn't seem to, she realises down the line she doesn't like Marty. She ends up liking George. And George realises that he does have some confidence in him when he knocks Biff out.
Yeah, especially when he like swings for and connects with that big hefty punch.
Oh, that was a good punch.
Yeah, that was a good punch, man. Really love that. Really love that.
All right, another character, Mr. Strickland, played by James Tolkien, who was famous for playing Stinger in the movie Top Gun. You know, the short guy, the one who says to Maverick and Goose, you know, you two.
I've seen that film, you know.
You've never watched Top Gun?
No.
You're pulling my leg. All right,
never seen it.
We have to review Top Gun because it's no time.
Obviously, it's an 80s film. So it's Tom Cruise,
and it's what made him a star. In that, he's a Navy commander, and he kind of transcends into this as well. So what was even funny was when one of the funny lines in that is when he's trying to warn Marty, you know, stay away from Doc Brown. He's bad news. He's this. He's that. He's, you know, this, that, and the other. And he's like, you know, none of you Mcflys ever amounted to anything in the history of this town. And he goes, yeah, well, history's going to change. And his famous line, slacker, he calls him that he calls that to George. He goes, your father came here and he was a bit of a slacker and you're one as well. He said, and then like, he's kind of pushing them a bit hard. You don't see much of Mr. Strickland. But what's even funny was in...
He's got an important role to play, though, isn't he?
He does, because he's kind of like trying to tell him, you know, stop being a pusher and stand up for yourself. He's saying that to George. He basically says the same thing to Marty down the line.
Yeah, he does.
And what was even funny was when he goes back in time and Marty sees him and goes, hey, that's Strickland. Did that guy never have hair on his head? And again, another funny moment in that movie. So moving on now to the famous car, the DeLorean. That was one dream car back in the 80s. That was a star.
The car made the film.
The car made the film because it's like when Marty says, when he says to Doc, when he goes, you know, you made a time machine out of a DeLorean. He goes, if we've got to go in time, we've got to do it in style.
And what pops up? The DeLorean.
Yeah, the DeLorean.
It's right. So I've got a bit of magic about the DeLorean.
Oh, go for it.
So, the DeLorean was deliberately selected for its general appearance and gull-wing doors in order to make it plausible that people in 1955 would presume it to be an alien spacecraft.
That actually happens in the scene where Marty ends up in that barn, and he goes and that kid's looking at the comic book and he sees the door opening up and he goes, sorry about the door, bang, and then he just... And then you see the car pulling out and everything. They think it's a space alien coming out.
Yeah.
And loads of people are fans of that. I've got something funny to tell you about that as well. Writers Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis received a fan letter from John DeLorean, who created that car, saying, after the film's release, thanking them for immortalizing his car.
They did.
They did. Everyone. There wasn't one kid who saw that movie who did not want that car.
Everybody wanted it. Some rare people in this world have a DeLorean. There isn't that many, of course. Yeah. Not many were made. It's a rarity, but the ones that have it, they've got a piece of history there.
Exactly.
To have a car like that, would you even want to drive it? I don't think I'd want to drive it. I'd be scared to chip the paint, or I don't think I'd...
Or if you end up back in another time that you want to go to. You never know. And they also said...
That would be quite incredible. Actually, would I want to go back in time, though?
And also...
would you go back in time if you could?
Who wouldn't want to go back in time?
So, if you had a moment, or if you had a year that you could go back in, it doesn't have to be in your younger days. Yeah. It can be in any year. What year would you go back?
I'd probably like to go back and see what life was like in ancient times.
Ancient times? Wow.
I'd like to go back even further. I mean, I wouldn't mind. Very rare close second I'd probably go to is probably either 60s or 70s.
I'd love to go back in the 60s. you know, where you had the plus if I did go back in the 60s, I wonder what they'll look at people like me, like mixed race. What is this? What kind of a person are you? So
I'm everything you're not.
I am, well, I'm everything that every one of you are.
But better.
But better. Like, that, I love your hair. Yep.
Yeah, so do I. So do I. It grows out of my head.
Yeah.
And what was also funny, after the film's release, body kits were made for DeLoreans to make it look like the time machine. Again, not surprised.
Not surprised.
You know, even Patrick Swayze, the late great actor, he brought himself a DeLorean. Not surprised.
Well, yeah, mate, if you can afford it.
Yeah, it was a classic car. It's like, as we mentioned beforehand, I think we should do a podcast on famous cars of the 80s.
Yes.
I think we should do that.
That'd be
because
incredible, yeah.
There's so many lists of cool cars we can talk about.
Comment on what you think about that. If you want us to do that,
drop a comment in the description. Please leave a comment in the comment section below, everybody, and let us know what you think of it. And also, if there's a car, there's
your most favourite car.
Yeah, like say for example, your favourite James Bond car, or your favourite Batmobile, your favourite Ferrari, like famous Ferrari in a movie or a TV series. We can talk about that. I mean, Miami Vice. Not going off topic, but Miami Vice. One of the famous things in that was the Ferraris that they drove. They were basically, we need to do a podcast on the original TV series of Miami Vice, because without a doubt it's the best cop show ever made.
Yeah.
And how it came by putting together and how the actors got casted is even a greater story.
Oh, well, it sounds like you've got really good stories about that.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Right. Also, okay, so again, that's obviously the car. I mean, yeah, so if you could go back, that's the places you would visit.
So after the 60s, the music was incredible back then as well. Rock and roll,
disco.
Things were just changing, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure.
Things were just changing. People were changing. People's beliefs about different things were changing.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a rebirth of humanity. It was just, everybody was just, and how colourful it was, and how artistry and music and literature, people like Bob Dylan, were a force in those times with the music he wrote, and a lot of his songs were actually used for a lot of the events against racism, against the many political events that was happening. Bob Dylan's songs, because he was such a great lyricist, were being used for those moments. So I don't really know what I can say about these times, other than wars and political nonsense that is going on.
Yeah, exactly.
But back then, just the history, like obviously with Martin Luther King and everything else.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to witness that firsthand.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I totally agree with you.
I'll go back in the 60s or 70s. The 70s were great as well. The music in the 70s was amazing.
Definitely. I mean, right, so here's another thing. What
about you?
I would, as I mentioned, I'd go back to the ancient times. I would actually probably go to ancient Rome.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a gladiator match.
Oh,
taking place. I would like
to stand in the front row though, like blood splatter and everything.
That I can shout, yeah, I am entertained, if you're going to say that.
Are you entertained?
And then, okay, that's one thing. And I would, in a way, go back to the Wild West, see how that was. And I would also like to...
Would you be...
I'd actually like to go back in time.
Would you be an outlaw? Or would you be a sheriff? You'd be a sheriff.
What do you think?
You'd be a sheriff.
Yeah, I would actually call myself Clint Eastwood, like he does in part.
You'd definitely be a sheriff then.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood. So, actually, one thing I would love to do if I ever went back in time, I would love to train with Bruce Lee.
Ooh, the 60s.
I would love to have at least 1 to 2 sessions with Bruce Lee, and I could say, yes, I trained with this man.
You know what I'd like of Bruce Lee?
Yeah.
Him to do the 1-inch punch on me.
He'd probably break you in half. But it'd be worth it.
Yeah, I can go back and go, oh, my rib. I just been punched by Bruce Lee. It's like, oh. I
would actually go, here's another thing I would do. I would actually go back in time and attend every single Rocky premiere. While Stallone's there, I would like just shake the
man. It's you again, but you haven't changed.
Oh, that was my grandson. That was my grandfather. That was my great-grandfather. That was my great-great-grandfather.
But you all look the same.
Good looks running the family.
Good genetics.
Good looks running the family.
But you have the same dad. It's a secret. I can't tell you.
I have a healing factor, like Wolverine, if you know who that is. And okay, so also, did you know on the scene there was a scene where, so talking about Eric Schultz, who was originally casted as Marty McFly. Did you know Thomas Wilson almost had his collarbone broken when the scene where Marty and Biff are about to have a fight in the cafeteria? Eric Schultz roughed him up for real, take after take after take, despite being repeated requests from Thomas Wilson to tone down his aggression. And Tom later said that he was about to return the favour during filming of the car park scene outside the dance, but Eric was fired before that confrontation could take place.
Hold on a minute. So how big was Eric?
A bit bigger than than Michael J. Fox.
Okay.
He basically played the actor in the movie the character in Pulp Fiction. You know where Uma Thurman's character is about to die from that overdose, and he shoves that telling John Travolta's character to shove the needle right there in the heart. That was Eric Schultz, who was casted as Marty McFly, but then they fired him after his behaviour.
Yeah, Marty McFly wasn't supposed to have been that intense kind of dude.
No, because he was only he was only like meant to be a 17-year-old kid, and Michael J. Fox is only 5'5" in real life, whereas Christopher Lloyd is like 6'1".
Yeah, it's just
dark. I mean, one movie you and I saw of his recently was Nobody. And to be honest with you, whenever you see Christopher Lloyd, who are you going to think of him as?
It's the same thing
all the time. Doc Brown. You're always going to think of him as Doc Brown, regardless of all the famous other characters he has played. Whether it was on the TV show Taxi, whether it was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, whether it was he did quite a few TV series. He's been in the acting business for so many years, and he's never retired. No. He's still going strong, bless him.
He looks quite good though, doesn't he?
You can tell he looks after himself.
Yeah, if you look after yourself, your body will look after you.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, Back to the Future was the top grossing movie of 1985.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised either.
The film is just... there's nothing else I can say about it. It's Back to the Future.
Exactly.
It's the spaceman from Pluto.
No, sticking Back to the Future.
Stupid name.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. Did you know even Johnny Depp auditioned for that role of Marty McFly?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He did.
Well, I am glad he didn't get it.
And yeah, I'm glad. Like I said, because remember, years later, who did he go on to play? Captain Jack Sparrow.
They did way too many Pirates of the Caribbean films.
Way too many, yeah. So okay, so let's talk favourite scenes and quotes. You go first. What's your favourite?
Make like a tree and leave.
So make like a tree and get out of here.
Yeah.
No, he says, yeah, make like a tree and get out of it. But then the future Biff comes back and tells him in part 2, make like a tree and leave.
Butthead.
Butthead was a classic. Yeah, that again, as you mentioned, that was all improvised. My other favourite one is in what was it Back to the part 1 where he's like especially that scene where Marty's running out of him after George, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, George, I mean, you on the bike?
You're on the bike."
And then he says that down the line as well, doesn't he? When he goes to him, take a grip, Daddy-o. He's like,
do you know another thing that I've noticed as well? This just been brought to me. For it. So have you noticed that Biff always in his car runs into
trouble?
A truck with manure in it.
Yeah, he does.
I hate manure. In your third one, it's the same thing. Manure comes onto him.
No, he gets punched in there this time because there's obviously no cars back in the Wild West.
The same thing happens. Manure gets I
hate manure.
I hate manure. I hate manure. That's everyone on theme. It's everyone on joke in the film.
It definitely is.
Just realise that it's like, wait a minute, this is my dog Biff.
Tannen.
It's just they're all the same. They always get, I hate manure.
What was funny was when in part 1 when what's a great scene in that was, you know, where George finally comes out of his shell.
Yes.
And he doesn't like the fact that Lorraine's been pushed over, and he just clenches his fist so hard. You see that fist turning bright red with rage. That's his rage. He's had enough. He's like,
he snapped.
And then Biff's like, twisting his arm. He's going to break his arm off, and he just goes bang. And then Biff's reaction when he falls
spins around, doesn't he? He spins around to the camera, and he's like, ugh. And he just falls, and he's like, you see Marty in the distance going, yes. And then he looks at the picture, doesn't he?
And he's slowly coming back.
Yeah.
They all fully come back is when Marty's on the stage and he's disappearing.
That's my favorite. That's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, mine too.
The Johnny B. Good, man. It's just like another favorite scene of mine as well, where the band, the band that plays, is full of black guys, obviously, and Biff and his mates run round the corner.
Yeah, and they throw Marty.
And obviously Marty's in the boot, and they say to him, "What are you looking at?" And then three other big guys get out of the car, and he's like,
we don't want no trouble." And then they run off.
He's like, "What did you?" He's like, "So what are you going to do now, punk?"
No, I don't want to mess with you guys. And he runs off, and then one of them's getting slapped as he's running away.
Yeah, he's so slapped.
It was a slap. Yeah, I don't get it. There's so many movies I've seen where, I know what it is. A slap can just make you laugh. So that slap can have you in stitches.
No, it's just the way he does that. What did you say, boy? I'm sorry. You just see his mates running off. Like, oh my god.
This is the most laughter I've had on this podcast.
I'll tell you what, I can remember when my dad slapped me once. It hurts, man. It hurts.
Yeah. And also, actually, there's another movie I saw once. It's not Back to the Future related, but there's this big tall guy, and he's quite built, and his boss is a bit smaller than him. Every time he does something stupid, a slap comes out the back of his head. The first time I watched this movie, it's called Class Act. It's got a Kid and Play in it who were famous for House Party.
Okay. And
there was a scene in it where this guy couldn't stop doing something stupid. He gets slapped. There's another funny scene in it where sorry, I gotta get the laughter out because there's a funny scene in it where the big guy, they're in a haunted house, and he's a big guy and he's got a crowbar, and his boss goes, "I'm going to go around this way, I want you to go this way." And then he goes, "I'm going with you." He goes, "Hey, what's that over there?" He goes, "What?" He goes, bang at the back of his head and goes, "Go that way." He goes, "Okay." I just could not stop that.
It's just the slaps, isn't it? It's just the slaps.
It's just hilarious.
It's the slaps. It's the sound effects as well.
Perfect timing sound effect. Even when there's no sound effect added on top and you hear the realistics effect, that's more sellable. And that's what makes it laugh even further. When we review Rocky Balboa,
I was going to mention that.
I've got some good stories to tell you about.
For real in those films. Because he asked to be punched for real.
We have to save it for that saga. We still need to finish this trilogy first.
Yes, that's in the future. Not literally in the future, not back. Well, it is kind of Back to the Future, literally, isn't it?
It's kind of, yeah. Right, and here's another funny, like I said, what's another funny favourite scene of yours?
It's not funny, but...
I did say favourite.
Alright, favourite, right?
Yeah.
Where Doc reveals that he didn't rip the letter up. He actually sellotaped, well, he did rip it up, but he sellotaped it all together. It's like, you never got rid of letters. Like, there's no harm in me doing it this once.
Yeah.
And then obviously when he goes back to the future, Doc, he wakes up, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And that's when he reveals to him, he never ripped the letter up.
Yeah.
And he's like, I thought you never told me to mess with time. And he's like, well,
what the heck?
What the hell? He's just like, yes.
That is true. And also another thing was, what's another great bit in that scene, when you see Marty breaking down, you feel like he's lost the only thing he kind of looks up to, like a father in a way, because he hasn't gone back home yet to see what has actually happened, that the change. He doesn't realise that till the very next morning. It's like the entire furniture of the house has changed, the layout's been changed, the dad dresses.
They're all wearing suits, like.
They're all wearing suits.
Marty comes out of his bedroom, he's like, what's going on here?
What are you wearing? Is I always wear a suit to the office.
Breakfast. And then his dad walks in with his mum. He's like,
Mum's lost a lot of weight.
He's like, Mum, you look great. And Dad, what? Dad.
And that Jeep he had is what he got given.
Yes, I've got yeah.
And what's another good thing is I like the transition of Biff towards the end.
Oh, yes.
He's turned into old Mcfly.
Yeah.
After that one punch.
Yep.
And then he's like, you know, I want make sure that there's 2 cans of wax on the car because I'm finishing it. Don't you con me? He goes, I'm sorry, I'm about to start it.
Don't you con me, Biff.
Yeah, that was good stuff because now he's got Biff under his thumb. Biff's probably working. Biff's just got his own little small time business. He's just washing people's cars, where George has now become a respected, successful, recognizable author.
What I like about it, like, I kind of felt bad for Biff.
Kinda. You knew he was going to end up there.
Yeah, kind of. You know, I'm not saying that I do full on feel sorry for him because the guy was a jerk, but they didn't actually tread on the character full on, did they? They gave him his own little business, which is nice of them. They could have gone to town on that character. Yeah. They could have made him homeless, or they could have made him whatever they wanted him to be. I think
homeless would have been too extreme.
Exactly. Anybody may have done that, but they gave him his own business. They made him into a nice, humble guy because of what he did. He regrets what he did, and obviously that punch didn't help, where he just got spattered on the floor by George. That was a great punch. But Marty's like this, isn't he? He's like, yeah, it's my dad. This is my it's my dad.
He's got somebody to look up to now.
Yeah.
Whereas beforehand, he didn't have anyone to look up to apart from Doc. Now he's got 2 people to look up to.
Exactly, Doc and his dad. I've got one for you. I've got another for you. At the London Comic Con in 2015. Michael J. Fox admitted that his 4 children never saw this film.
Wow.
Never saw the movie.
They'll be like, oh, this is what this movie...
May have done now, but...
Probably, they probably said, this is now... this movie is basically paid for the house. This paid for your education and everything. This whole franchise paid for everything and everything else. And here's another thing. Did you know when, at that time, Leah Thompson, who played Lorraine McFly... It took them 3 hours to go from the 23-year-old into the 47-year-old. 3 hours they had to do all the makeup prosthetics to make her look older. Oh yeah, you can do that. I mean, sometimes you could be in a, like, for example, when, what's his name? Lou Ferrigno, when he played the Incredible Hulk in the TV series.
I can imagine, yeah.
He said every morning he had to be on set at about 4 o'clock in the morning to get painted.
That's a drag, isn't it?
4 o'clock in the morning, or half 4, call it 5. 4 o'clock in the morning, he had to be up there, be all painted, have all the prosthetics done on the forehead, the nose, the eyes, the teeth, the wig. And it took him an hour to take it all off every night.
That wind me up.
And the same thing he did with Dave Bautista, who played Drax in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Love that film.
Who didn't.
Can't wait for the 3rd one.
Again, who doesn't. And believe it or not, okay, now that I've mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy...
I'm glad that James Gunn's back to direct it.
Definitely, same here. And believe it or not, what's his name? Chris Pratt based his character on Marty McFly and Han Solo.
You know what? He kind of reminds me of the 2 of them. He kind of reminds me of both of them as well. Yeah.
The red jacket, the jump, the
personality. It's all, yeah, you know what? Now you've said that, it kind of reminds me of Marty. Yeah, that is definitely an evolution of Marty. Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to reveal, as we now do with every movie, what do you scale?
The first one?
Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you score it out of?
8.
I'd definitely give it a 9.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay, in between 8 and 9.
Yeah. No, if you want to say 9.
Okay, 9.
Yeah, but high enough, both.
Definitely.
Yeah. Love the film, man.
And did you know there was a deleted scene where Marty's peeking on in class and he sees his mother cheating on a test? There was going to be a deleted scene in that one.
Didn't need it there, did they?
No.
What's the point in that? It has nothing to do with the story at all.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, so unfortunately that's all the time we have for today's podcast. Please be tuned in for when we review part 2 and part 3. Do you want to do part 3? Yeah, we have to do part 3.
Of course we need to do part 3. We need to end the trilogy after.
I think a trilogy is never completed if you don't do all 3
If you're getting one revealment.
Go for it.
So we all know that 4.
Yeah.
Back to the Future there was 4 was going to be, but obviously it didn't happen. Can't happen now, of course. It was going to be based in ancient Rome. Yeah. Wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
I'm glad they didn't do that either. I think after part 3,
there's nowhere else to
go. Nowhere else to go.
They've done everything. I think trilogies I mean, okay, there's very rare quadrilogies out there that actually are great. But when it comes to trilogies, it's very rare that all films are as good as each other.
Yeah.
For me, the third one wasn't that good. It wasn't great like the first two.
Yeah.
But it's still a really good film.
Oh yes,
it did a top first and second one, and obviously you can't beat the first one. You can never beat the first.
You can never beat the first one because that's what set the blueprint for everything else.
Exactly. So third one was great, but we'll talk about that in the long run. But I'm really, really glad they didn't do a fourth one because it just would have ruined. It would have tarnished the entire history of the film. I think.
Yeah.
It would have been a forgotten brother. You know, we don't know this guy.
No, that's it.
Don't invite him to any of the parties. You're fine. Where's Back to the Future 4 at?
They said
he's not coming.
Yeah, they said that the reason why they created the video game of Back to the Future was the fact that if they had to do a part 4, this would have been the idea for it. But it's good. It's good they just leave it as 3.
Just leave it 1, 2, and 3. That's it. That's all you need.
Anything more than that would have been overkill.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Too much milking the cow, as we say.
When there's not enough milk left.
Yeah, there was no milk left after 3.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Aiden, thank you very much as always for coming in and being the fellow podcaster with myself.
It's no problem.
And as always, everybody, as we mentioned, please give us a follow on Insta, give us a follow on social media. Aiden's website's due soon.
It's very due soon, isn't it?
Very due soon. My own website's being completely revamped. We've got Tal to thank for that as well.
Thank you, Tal.
Yes, bro.
Wherever you may be.
He's probably gone back in time.
Back in time.
Classic song. Huey, classic
Don't
man.
need money.
Classic. No, it's true. I mean, if you have a soundtrack that's just as great as the movie itself, you're winning both ends of that coin.
It's just... Everything about the film is special. You've got the music, you've got the actors, you've got the story, you've got the sequels, the humour.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you see a film like that has everything going for it.
Yeah, definitely.
That is definitely one of the films. Definitely one of the films.
So we'll definitely be back soon with another standalone movie from the 80s, and then we're going to be talking about part 2, and then we're going to be jumping into a legendary rivalry between 2 action stars. And again, everybody, thank you for your support. If you made it to the end of this, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to 80s Podcast, to AddiBiotics, to Biotic Podcast, please give us all a follow, turn on those, click subscribe, turn on notifications, because we do have videos coming your way. And just look after yourselves, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon. And
thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, and as always, remember, the 80s rocked.
They do rock.
What this guy agreed with.
What this guy said.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, brother. Cheers. Have a good one.